underground, Chambers was forced to let go of the fusion of purpose and community that had met so many of his needs. He'd been singled out and given a higher purpose, but at the same time, cut off. Never again would he be able to root his intensity in the soil of a stable communist community. For the next 6 years, he would have to move constantly, live under assumed names, lie as a matter of course to almost everyone around him, separate himself from many of his friends, and subject his wife and his young children to an isolation that was so extreme it verged on cruelty. To sustain him, there were occasional thrills, a sense of mission, a belief in the cause, and a few friendships forged in the crucible of underground life that attained a battlefield intensity, including, most significantly, the friendship with State Department official and secret communist Alger Hiss. But day to day, month to month, year to year, it would prove a bone-wearying existence. "Now, what name did you use there?" asked one of the attorneys for Alger Hiss in 1948, deposing Esther about the few months that the family spent in Staten Island in the winter of 1933. "Arthur McGuire. Arthur Dwyer," said Esther. "Arthur Dwyer?" "Arthur Dwyer." "And who did you know?" "Nobody," said Esther. "While you were living there?" "Nobody except the A&P man." "Did you have an account with the A&P store?" "Oh, no, not an account, but just a nodding acquaintance. I just asked him to send things out on occasion and made purchases there." For his first 2 years in the underground, while he and Esther, and soon their daughter Ellen, who was born in 1933, were bouncing around the boroughs of New York, Chambers's primary task was to act as a liaison between Soviet military intelligence and the American Party. That meant, in practice, that he was a courier, one link in a chain that led from Moscow through Germany to New York and back again. Sailors coming over on shipping lines from Germany would deliver their packages, letters written in invisible ink and microfilm concealed behind the faces of small mirrors, to contacts at the dock, who would deliver them to Chambers, who would bring the package to one of the apartments used by the party for such purposes. The letters would then be treated with chemicals to bring out the messages, and the microfilm would be enlarged and printed. Chambers's superior would read them, take some notes, and then burn all the documents. A similar procedure was followed in reverse to send messages back across the ocean. There were other tasks, but they were almost as rote, exacerbating the tediousness of all the copying, delivering, and enlarging was an exhausting set of practices designed to keep the work hidden from an American counterintelligence apparatus that didn't in fact exist. Chambers could spend hours in a single day traversing the city, doubling back, changing trains, circling blocks, simply to make his way to one clandestine meeting, which might last for a few minutes or even a few seconds, at which point he'd turn around and begin the process of evasion again. There were aspects of the work that he enjoyed. He was too much his father's son not to revel at least a bit in the exoticism of underground life, all the coded language, the secret bases, the furtive glances, and Baroque precautions. And he was too much his mother's son not to take advantage sometimes of the opportunities he was afforded to perform. He would often go out of his way in the first few years in the underground to drop theatrically enigmatic hints to his old friends that he was doing work of grave importance. He liked trying on identities and even went so far for a number of years as to affect a slight accent to convince his comrades in the underground that he was Russian. The peculiar nature of underground work also gave him the push he needed to explore his attraction to men. He was suddenly dropped into a netherworld where the boundaries between the licit and the illicit, the moral and immoral, were blurred, and where a large part of his job was to act in ways that men like him in that era tended to act when they were cruising for anonymous sex with other men. The large part of his job was to move in the shadows, to exchange meaningful glances with strangers, to make midnight ambles punctuated with intervals of purposeful loitering. After a year or two of such a life, the dam that he'd put up between himself and his sexual attraction to men finally broke open. In 1933 or 4, a young fellow stopped me on